used to promote education at a very young age to create strong foundation for their future. For this session, we have Vishal, Sunil, co-founder and Chief Technology Officer, Rocket Learning; Purvi, Shah, Senior Director, Storyweaver, Pratham Books; Siddesh, Sarma, co-founder and Chief Programs Officer, Leadership for Equity; Nitin, Kashyap, Product Manager, Readalong, Google. And the session will be moderated by Alifiya, Assistant Editor, The Indian Express.
Am I audible? Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here. As the introductions have already been done and we are short of time, I won't waste any time on further introductions. Like you all know, during the program, our subject is using technology to enable foundational learning. Before we even begin on the subject, I would like one of my co-panelists to share some light on what exactly do we mean by foundational literacy and numeracy, and why are we talking about it today. Suddenly there has been a lot of focus on foundational literacy and numeracy, so if you could please shine a light on that.
Hi, I hope I'm audible at the back. Thanks, Alifiya. So, everybody's talking about foundational literacy and numeracy right now. We've been saying for the last 15 years, and the statistics haven't changed, that 1 out of 2 children in India and 617 million children globally are not reading at grade level. The reason why suddenly there has been this huge focus, and rightly so, is for several reasons, right? One is that the SDG 30s talk about universal literacy for all, and if we have to achieve the SDG 30, now is the time to start. The NEP 2020 also has a huge focus on foundational literacy, and they've done few really great things, right? One where now it's from 3 years to 8 years, so the Balwadis have been pulled in, and there is focus on language acquisition right from grade 3, from age 3 to age 8. But one of the main reasons, and I'm with Pratham Book Storyweaver, so we publish children's storybooks in multiple Indian languages. With Storyweaver, we've sort of open licensed our entire library. We've created tools for teachers, librarians to create stories, to translate stories in 300 languages. And what we have understood, one of the biggest inputs, and the NEP talks about this as well, is that children don't have access to books in mother tongue languages. So how do we expect our children to have a great vocabulary? How do we expect our children to acquire 1 million words, which is what privileged children have when they get into grade 1? Underserved children don't have that large a vocabulary. How will all of this happen if they are not exposed to good children's storybooks in mother tongue languages at the right reading level? And that is the one very big focus in the NEP as well, along with a reading hour or a reading period that has been introduced.
Siddesh, if you could share some light on, what the number of surveys have pointed about, the impact that the lack of foundational literacy has at an early age on later learning stages. The multiple surveys that we've had in the country today, right from NAS to the ACER reports, what they point to and what does it mean? Why do we need to speak about this today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's not just the research. Obviously, it goes what Purvi said, right? The basic is that at by grade 3 level, a child should be able to read a paragraph. A child should be able to perform basic operations. We are finding, and repeated surveys are finding, that even at a grade 8 level, many children across India do not even have these skills. So without these foundational skills, as we call them, your employability suffers, your transition into higher education suffers, your basic ways to interact and be successful in the society of the 21st century suffers. And those without these skills are at a major disadvantage and detriment in being able to succeed in life. as a result of not having these foundational skills. So, which is why I think one of the biggest push of the NEP 2020 has and the Nipun Bharat mission has been on ensuring that every child by grade 3 is able to achieve these basic skills. I think it's high time we did that. We should have done that in the last 60 years, but it's high time we do that now.
Earlier, right? Shows up even earlier, right? If you can't read at your grade level by the time you're in grade 3, then your interest starts dropping out, right? Like you're not interested in, you can't understand what is being taught in class, so you're more likely to drop out. It kind of starts that vicious cycle. It's the root that really leads to it. It's great to see that NEP is now sort of actually acknowledge it, and it is front and center.
Learning to read, to reading to learn. That's the journey we have to take the children through.
This learning loss that we are talking about, I know that this is, the pandemic is something that has often been discussed and its impact has been discussed, but wouldn't that have been aggravated, especially given that a lot of children didn't have access to, education, classrooms, especially from the lower income families? What is the impact that the pandemic would have had? Vishal, your thoughts?
Sure, let me chime in on this. So we sort of did a study with the Legal Center and tried to understand, okay, what are the behavioral patterns and how maybe we can judge two different edtech programs or two different online programs, right? A key thing is that, like, if it caused behavioral change and if it gave access in a way that even the low-income community could access it, the view of tech was significantly twice or thrice higher in terms of propensity of continuing with edtech, right? So it's about designing the system in such a way that it's not meant to be a synchronous thing where a Google Meet or a Zoom link is used for teaching, because a lot of communities don't have stable internet. For children to sit at this age is very difficult, right? So it's about the type of edtech situations, and certain edtech interventions did have different impacts, right? So what we found is that, for example, Rocket Learning, when we worked with our stakeholders in Mumbai, what we found is they were twice as likely to continue with edtech afterwards, and that on average their scores, if you look at the average treatment effect over standard deviation, moved to the 70th percentile of their class, right? They still suffered learning loss, unfortunately, right? Overall, if you see 40 to 60% learning loss if you look at a particular thing, but we're able to mitigate it with edtech. So tech can play a positive role in mitigating that learning effect.
I'd like to chime in a couple of statistics so that we all understand the gravity. I've been a teacher for 2 years in a government school. I right now work advising multiple state governments on formulating FLN strategies. So one of the things, and some numbers, right? One of the biggest numbers that gets thrown out is the Azim Premji University study, which says that more than 90% of children in a particular grade level have lost one ability from the previous grade level due to the school closures. The other thing that gets thrown around pretty often through the ASAR report is that only 36% of children even received any learning materials during school closures. So when we know before school closures, if we know that 50% of children are not able to read at a grade 2 level or perform basic division, this is when 100% schools are functional. Imagine when schools have been closed and only 36% have even received a basic learning resource or calls once a week. Then what is the magnitude of the problem which we are facing today? So while yes, it's great to start with the effect of the pandemic, we all know the new reality, but working at a state government level, we're just seeing the magnitude of the problem. And in fact, even in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, these places, 80% of the students have not even received one learning resource across 1.5 years. So that's the level, and it's just on foundational skills across the board. I'm sure it has much more impact.
Right.
I want to also add one more aspect. With the learning loss, there's also a lot of emotions, the emotional life of the child also has to be looked at, and that I think has been one of the biggest effects of the pandemic, right? We in Maharashtra, when we did the Goshtisha Shanivar, where every Saturday a story went digitally, we heard back stories from the field, from teachers, from children, from parents, that through these stories, children had, mirrors, windows and doors to different worlds. So as a child, 2 years I've not been in school. I've lost my peer group. My home condition, we all know, is not great. This sort of became an escapism and sort of kept the emotional well-being of the child safe. And I think that's one more thing that we should, as we're talking about learning losses, also think about the emotional well-being of not only the children but also the teachers as well.
Right. So I think more or less we've established that even though more than 90% of the children in this country between the age of 6 to 14, this is another statistic that I picked up from one of these surveys, does go to a school, they do not necessarily learn. There is a great gap in the learning. So I think now I'll steer this subject more towards a pointed discussion on how technology can help in covering, this learning loss that we have, this gap in foundational learning. So probably I'll have each one of you share your experiences. Nitin, if you could begin with yours.
Yeah, I think that there are two sort of levels of answer to that question. So one is just at the level of technology overall, and there the fundamental belief, and being a technologist, being part of Google, right, is that technology, and we have heard this enough number of times in the morning too, and I also truly believe it, technology alone cannot solve the problem, right? It is not the panacea, it is not the solution on its own, right? But it can be a very powerful part of the solution. It can be an immense force multiplier when put to the right use, and when put in a way that it supports the teachers and empowers the students and the system, right? And this is because I think there are three fundamental things that it brings to the table, right? One is enhanced access, right? Yes, we talk about there is still a large digital divide, but if you still see there are 500 million Android phones out in the country, right? And that is almost 1 in every 2 or 3 in that sense, right? So there is an immense opportunity there. If we can make the right experiences work with something as simple as a 2000 rupee 1 GB phone, that is our best chance really to break the cycle of we're dependent on resources and how do we scale, right? So there's enhanced access. The second thing that technology really brings on the table is better experience, more engaging experiences, right? It can really enhance the efficacy of the intervention that you want to do. Technology opens up the possibility, especially in foundational reading and for using speech to text and text to speech, to actually deliver experiences which make reading a joy for a child, right? Learning to read a joy for them. You can gamify the experience to them. You can even give the feedback to the child when nobody else in the house knows how to read, which is a big problem that many of them are first generation learners, right? But technology can enable that the child is reading out to a phone and the phone is giving them the feedback whether they are reading it right or wrong, right? And it can encourage them as well, right? And the third aspect I think which technology makes possible, and it is much more relevant to all of us here, is it can really ease measurement, right? Large scale measurement, baselining, and then tracking the impact is very difficult otherwise, especially in this space of foundational literacy. And technology again opens up the path for us to do it at scale, right? I'll let the others chime in, but then also maybe after that we can play a little video which kind of brings to point the product I work on at Google, which is called Readalong, right? And how that would demonstrate a lot of these aspects.
It's a very interesting aspect in terms of measurement, because as a journalist I can tell you that we always look towards the impact that a program has had, and when we look at whenever we look for data, it's very hard to come by on what is the actual impact. So like you said, probably if this is one area where we really need to harness technology. Yeah, you wanted to say something.
Sorry, I'll just add on, because immediately after that, I think looking at it from a systemic perspective, I think we can look at the impact of technology in 4 pillars. One at a level of a child, where he spoke about gamification, personalized learning, the engagement of the content, all of that. The second at the level of the teacher, where there's the huge capacity gap, I think panels and sessions before that have been discussing, of the teachers, for teachers to themselves access quality in-service training through blended courses or certified courses, so teacher education and training. The third in terms of governance, where state governments, central governments can, through using dashboards and using good quality data sets, take database policy decisions. And the fourth is more in terms of community engagement. Across the world we have seen the distance between the parent and the school has been reduced thanks to technology, where the child is studying at home, so the parent knows what the teacher is doing with their, and the effort that it takes. So all of these 4 pillars I think can be, and technology can be a huge amplifier across these 4 spheres.
I'll come back to you on that. I have a question associated, but
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add on to what Nitin spoke about. I think, and everybody's speaking about, technology in terms of an equality of access play, right? Or different ways that people can access it in the local language or can learn without going through a traditional university. I think we also need to talk about EdTech in terms of equality of learning outcomes, right? And what that means is taking that step ahead to behavioral change and actually driving engagement, right? Building an app or building a product is only useful if users actually adopt it and use it over time. So it's very important that even as technologists, we evaluate ourselves on cohort analysis and sort of trying to make sure that we actually have a sustainable engagement over time, right? And this is really important because think about the iPhone or the smartphone you all have in your hands, right? When the experience wasn't great, when we had the HTC sort of pads and so on like that, nobody ever adopted it. But when somebody cracks the ultimate incentive and adding value to your life, that's when technology gets adopted. So that's not any different in EdTech, right? So it's about creating products in a way that we're able to adopt it and it adds enough value to your life, right? In that sense of the equation, right? So, and it's also about reaching the right stakeholders. I think I just like to build on a community point really quickly, which is that I think the people with the most incentives are people like you, right? The parents of the child, right? And the teacher has maybe 20, 30 children under her or him, and sort of can only divvy up their attention so much, right? The system is taking care of 20,000, 30,000 children, right? So if you are looking for a top-down change, right, from the system level down to the child to distill it, that's when sort of we see the, if we do RCTs, we see often that it doesn't actually distill down to the child. So it's about involving the right people, right? It's about involving the community. A lot of the low income works on communities, right? So it's about involving the teacher and the parents together and aligning it better to offline natural socioeconomic situations that they're in.
Vishal, you said that, of course, you're a technologist, so you're going to say that technology is an equalizer and, it gives everyone an equal space. But there's often, an argument that technology is a very elitist thing, especially given though he said that there are 500 million smartphones, but they not necessarily be with those who are, parents of, preschoolers. So multiple surveys have pointed out, the gap that we have in terms of the need and the access to smartphones and devices. So do you really think that when we are focusing on, incorporating technology to enable, especially foundational literacy, are we integrating, a bigger chunk of people, or are we isolating them? And if we are integrating, or if we can integrate, how can this be done, especially given the limited access to smartphones and devices that we have?
I think that's a great question. So let me give you some context in terms of my own experiences, right? So Rocket Learning, we work with 8 lakh children across 5 states, mostly 3 to 8-year-old children. We focus on early childhood education and foundational learning, right? What we do is we create digital classrooms to teach children at home. Parents are part of the group and one teacher is part of the group. They add a Rocket Learning number and the experience is then taken over by our technology, right? So to answer your question, right, what we've seen actually across our user base is actually quite a high adoption, right? And I can give you numbers now. We have 6.5 lakh of those 800,000 read on a weekly basis all of the content that we send. 200,000 of them actually respond back with videos and images, right, on a weekly basis, and 300,000 on a monthly basis, right? So because we are focused on engagement and behavioral change in that sense. So how have we managed to skirt the hurdles that you rightly point out? I think the issue is that, like, what we usually find is that either the father or the mother has a smartphone, right? So and it's not always available for the children. Neither is it good for a child to spend a long period of time on a screen, right? So the idea is, can we design an asynchronous model, right, that basically delivers, so we deliver content that's less than 3 minutes long, less than 10 MB, low bandwidth, that works on a geophone as well, right? On the platform itself, we use WhatsApp, we don't make them download another app, right? So it's all about designing for familiarity and use case. And one of the key things is the community again. So because the teacher is there, she's able to bring in the students, add that hybrid connect, right? The teacher is able to step in and personalize the experience, while she doesn't have to worry about what content do I have to send next, or curating the content, right? Or nudging the right parents and so on, right? That's what Rocket Learning tries to take care of. So we're taking care of the top part of the huddle, of the funnel as well, that just access part of it we also try to design for, right? So it's about creating that. So we create these videos that have this call to action that you do something offline with your child, right? So it's a learning or discovery based activity, right? So you, for example, arrange the objects in the shape in order of size, right? Just simple things like that that anybody can do at home, and send a photo or video back on it in the group. You then get certificates, medals, right? You then are incentivized in the right way, right? So it's, and what we've also found is that media and videos are very important, because most mothers in our catchment area are more 8th standard educated usually on average, and often find it difficult to read textbooks or read a lot of words, right? So you just have to design for the user, and these are some of the examples that I'm quoting here. But I think, and that's one of the reasons why Rocket Learning is a non-profit, because we feel that to address this low-income community sort of in the right way, you need to have your incentives clear. Your incentives aren't to promote the 5% who would pay, right? So it's also about how you structurally define and approach the problem in some sense.
I think Nitin, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would also want to kind of slightly refine the question. I think technology is elitist, is separate from the challenge we have with access, right? I actually believe technology, there is nothing more democratizing than technology, right? The same experience is what Sundar Pichai's child will get on a particular app or a particular product that you're, and anybody and somebody out there on the street can exactly do it, right? So in my mind, there is nothing more democratizing than technology as such, right? When designed well and when made accessible.
But the access to it is.
Yes. So the access to devices, and again there I think we have talked about this problem since morning as well, right? But that one is something where all of us together, Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar, have to work, and the directions are, the market forces are, and the societal forces are. I have no doubt that in the next 2 to 3 years, that will cease to be an issue, right? It is already, as I just said, right, the number of phones out there. I was in Sikkim 2 weeks ago, and at 14,000 feet in front of a school, there were 4 parents sitting, and all of them had a phone in their hand, right, in front of a government school, right? So I think the direction we are heading in is the right. We should see if we can accelerate it, right? But the more important question is, even when access is solved, then how does the experience work? Then can we achieve the outcomes? Then can the experience help us really improve the literacy?
So, while we are talking about foundational literacy, the end consumer here, or the one that we are to impact, are preschoolers. And even though we create the technology, we create the tools, obviously they won't be able to use it unless and until they get help. So the two main stakeholders here in this entire process that emerges are the teachers and the parents that we are talking about. So I'll address that one at a time. You spoke about your experience as a teacher, and also during the pandemic, the changes that the teachers had to undergo. Can you tell us that, if what has your experiences been in terms of what has been the challenges which educators faced in adopting technology during the pandemic, especially in terms of foundational learning and in this age group?
Sure, I can do that. One of the biggest things I think teachers are, now when I'm not talking about one school, 10 school, I'm talking about 5 lakh schools across so many states when we're dealing with lakhs of teachers. So one of the trends that we were seeing is, of course, younger teachers adopt technology faster than older teachers. But across the board, the awareness of how to use, what is even Google Meet, how do we use that to effectively connect with children, is that itself is going to be limiting. So grappling with the aspect of using the product itself is one. Having understood how to use the product, then how do I tailor my teaching style to suit an online learning environment? Because maths teachers said usually they demonstrate on a blackboard step by step how to solve a particular thing. But that demonstration, either using a whiteboard feature, was not possible because it was not visible to different children's share screen, they were not able to do. Or if they try to do a same blackboard type of thing, children are not able to see. So So these are, I'm saying micro because there are many educators also in the audience, but this is some micro level challenges. At a macro level, access to devices and mindsets towards using them also are big challenges, because parents are then afraid that too much usage of devices. We conducted a field survey during COVID lockdowns. We got special permissions, went into communities to understand what is happening. One of the big things parents said was they were, in the name of taking online lessons, they take the mobile phone from the parent. This is in rural areas, and they are either playing games, accessing adult content, or so many other type of things, right? So parents then become tentative about giving that technology to the child. So all of these issues were faced during the school closures while adopting technology.
Right. Coming back to parents, I had actually warned my panelists before this discussion started that I am a parent of a preschooler and a very late adopter to technology. I'm quite against, actually, initially, yes, of course, because multiple studies, multiple surveys, have taught us as parents that there should be a limited exposure to screen time, especially when it comes to the preschooling years. There was a time limit that was given to me as a mother by the pediatrician. It shouldn't exceed 40 minutes in a day, otherwise it's going to impact their brain development. So while all these studies are talking about limited exposure to screens and limited exposure to devices, how do you justify, how do you tackle this argument that we have in favor of technology? So I'm sure that both you, Nitin and Vishal, are going to argue in the favor, but I'm hoping that you take my side here, and if we can have a discussion on how it works both ways. Yes, we shall let them argue their point.
I think primarily we like to say we're on the side of our users, not on the side of technology or not, and the side of parents and children. Right? So ultimately, it's about. I think it's about, again, and I come back to this, is about what type of technology you're using and what the impact of it is per hour, right? If you look at both panelists on left and right of me, they build great solutions and are focused on a particular impact, right? If you look at Readalong, is focused on, giving child continuous feedback, and he'll play the video soon. And Storyweaver also, in terms of the access to language and so on, right? So it's about the technology and what you should do with it. What Rocket Learning generally always promotes is that the videos are meant to be watched by parents, and the activities are supposed to be done at home with the help of textbooks or household materials, right? So what we endeavor to do is to optimize that time. What we also found in one of our studies, and what we're trying to do, is also a time use study, right? Which is per minute of reported time spent with your child, right? And correlating that with your learning outcomes, right? What was that coming out like? And one of the things that we're really happy about is that even controlling for mother's education, which often is the biggest influencer, right? What we found is that the children who use technology like Rocket Learning and so on were more effective with their time. So if we can get to a point where we can help the parent and help the children be more effective with their time, I think that's a good use case of technology, right? That's what I'd like to speak for.
My answer would again be in sort of two levels, right? So one is a very general statement which my dad always said, look, access of anything is bad, right? If I replace technologies for screen time with sugar or excess love or pampering in the portion, it will still hold the portion, right? So, and the second one, there is also the responsibility is jointly for technologists who are designing the technology and users together. It's a joint responsibility, right? At the end of the day, the choice is with that parent as well, and with the child, in terms of if they have a limited time, right? What sort of experience would they want to engage with, right? That agency is always on the user side, right? So I think it's a combination of those two things, like the responsibility being shared by technologists and the users, and yes, generally recognizing that excess of anything is bad. So we are not arguing here for just blind use of technology here in this space, right? But you have to weigh it against the average impact. If it did not exist, right, then what would have been the rate of change, rate of progress, and on average, can that rate of progress be improved by having it? And of course, finally the impact will also vary, like the negative impact of extra screen time would really vary on a child who already has access to 2 hours of time, and then you are asking spend 10 more minutes reading also, like what's the incremental impact? Versus imagine a child who has no access, right? And if you are asking them to do 5 minutes or 10 extra minutes of reading, then the incremental impact, the marginal utility of that time is going to be so much higher in that particular case, right? So I think we have to evaluate it on a contextual basis too. It can't be a very generalized answer.
For the younger age group, I mean 3 to 6 years, I mean we've seen it in the field as well. I don't think there is a huge push to just use technology without mediation. So even with the teachers or the organizations or MSCRT that we worked with, I think there was a lot of curation that was done at the teacher's end, and very little stuff was going every day. So I think that is very important, because 3 to 6 years you want the human connect. Like we saw so much grassroots innovation leveraging technology innovatively. So if the children were used to going to a library and hearing the librarian, that same librarian did a video and sent it on WhatsApp. So there is such a nice connect that the child has sitting at home, hearing the same voice, acquiring language literacy, but not really necessarily engaging or going overboard with the gadget, and that seems to be the concern. So I think there has to be a balance, and like I think in this case, particularly in the pandemic, we have seen that where there was access, like Nitin said, that there has been progress, and there has been a lot of like what we saw as stories of change and innovation and sharing, right? So in the Basti, there was one mobile phone. It was a mobile phone that was shared with all the children during that time of learning, which are all the good stories of hope and encouragement that came through the pandemic.
Thank you for all the pressure. No, I agree to all the points, and in fact, I'm a proponent and avid user of technology myself. I fully agree with the balanced approach, and specifically for the age group that we're talking about, it's a mediated approach, it's not a direct to child approach. So for sure, all of those points are valid. But at the same breath, I think we deserve to mention multiple things. So one at a user level, one at a design level, and one at a societal impact level. So at a user level, when we talk about gamification, I'm not just talking about the 3 to 6 age group. In general, when you're talking about educational apps, if you're talking about gamified content, what does gamification work on? One of the principles is that by correctly doing things, you get a dopamine rush. Okay, and that dopamine rush becomes addictive, like any other dopamine rush on any other substance, and this has been proven through various social media studies that could have an adverse impact on the child, and in terms of usage, screen time. So the screen time is just one statistic. The underlying principle is a dopamine rush, right? So that's one that one has to be careful of. I'm not saying one cannot do without it. This panel discussion also would be giving me a dopamine rush, right? So I'm not advocating against that. The second level in terms of the design element. Now, since morning, if we looked at all the panelists and all the speakers, what we're talking about, the word delivery and transaction is something that stands out in everybody talking about education. But when you look at education theory and research, I don't think that's the best way to use that term. Education is not just about delivery of a pre-decided set of pre-packaged set of content, and using technology to just effectively deliver something. I'm sure people in the panel also will agree to that. So at a design level, until we are reaching a fact where we are agreeing upon the aim of education to be much beyond delivery, it is more about critical consciousness, democratic citizenship, it could be so many other things as envisioned by NEP itself. And then with the design of the technology using that, then we can say that yes, maybe it's promoting a much broader aim of education than just a delivery aspect of efficient delivery of education. At a societal level, what am I trying to say? I forgot my point, so I'm just going to stop here in terms of these 2 points. Yeah.
Fair enough. Before, I was told that I should keep some time for questions, maybe if the audience has.
Can I also ask I think some of the points that we discussed come very nicely alive in a little video that we have about Readalong, which talks about how it works, some of the elements we talked about, and how does it work for teachers and society as well, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Is that fine? If I may request the team to play that video, please.
And more than 25 crore students. Yet, less than 50% of grade 5 children can confidently read a grade 2 level textbook.
The Government of India, Ministry of Education's Nipun Bharat mission aims to change that by ensuring Students meet their foundational literacy and numeracy goals by the end of grade 3 by 2026-27. A mission we salute by bringing the best of Google with Readalong, an Android app that encourages young learners to practice and improve their reading skills. Dia listens to the young learner as they read out loud, helps them when they get stuck, squirrels, and encourages them when they read well.
शाबाश, तुमने सही पढ़ा.
Children earn stars and badges and find reading enjoyable. Read Along works offline, so you don't need to be connected to the internet while using the app, and it even works on entry-level smartphones. Teachers can create reading groups on the Read Along app and can monitor student progress by checking the stories read by them, their reading speeds, and the time spent on reading. Students are asked questions based on the stories they read, which helps teachers understand if the students are developing comprehension skills. Independent studies have demonstrated the impact that sustained use of Read Along has on students' reading abilities. Read Along has over 2 crore users, and our stories have been read more than 8.5 crore times in the last 2 years. Like Nipun Bharat, Read Along is designed for India. Read Along supports English and 7 different Indian languages and is already part of 3 state government programs. Read Along is easily scalable, as it can be implemented and monitored through the existing ground infrastructure at the state, block and district level. With Read Along's unique ability to enter block-level partner codes, states get the ability to track usage metrics. States can also have their school textbook content be part of Read Along.
Highlights as we touched upon in the session as well, right? Like in terms of design, how do you design the experience for keeping the child in mind, right? Making the reading activity engaging with them. The whole the DIA that is powered by artificial intelligence and can listen, the speech to text and text to speech technologies is a way to connect with the child in a way that they are used to, right? It's like they're reading DD that they are working with, right? The fact that it can work offline again goes back to the same, that how do we serve the target audience where this connectivity might be a problem. How do you design for what is the experience for teachers? What is it that will help for teachers there, right? And similarly, how do you design so that we can work and integrate it with government programs? Like we have had immense success with working with the government of UP on the Mission Prerna, with Gujarat, with Telangana. A lot of my co-panelists are partners there in the implementations there as well, right? So I think kind of brings to life some of the points that we touched about. So it is the onus is definitely on the people designing the technology to do it right, and then working together with the system, teachers and administrators and everybody to implement it also in the right way.
Just as the last point, I think now is also a catalytic time for the ECC space, right, with the NEP and sort of every state sort of clamoring to either make their Anganwadis or Balwadis into educational centers from just nutritional centers, or start preschool programs and so on, right? So I think parents and communities and technologies are going to play a big role, and also like so we are going to design the system. This is a great time for us to all come together and design the system in such a way that all of these mesh together and play the right path, right? So in fact, the Women and Child Development Ministry has actually empowered an expert task force on particularly community engagement and technology, which Rocket Learning is also honored to be a part of. So I think right now is the correct time to intervene with tech and communities in the FLN and ECC space.
This was actually going to be my last question, Vishal, that though we've already started taking baby steps. Until the last few years, it was RTE and 6+ years of age that we were focusing on. But after NEP 2020, the focus now, of course, has shifted towards foundational learning, and it starts right from there. So while we've already started taking baby steps, what do you think is the way forward? Like Vishal has given us some pointers. If you want to leave some thoughts here.
The way forward for FLN.
Incorporating technology, like what is the next step that we need to take?
I think somebody in the previous session also mentioned it. I think the first step has to be access. Even though we are seeing such encouraging usage, 2 crore plus users and all of that, the Indian numbers are a little bit much more staggering. The Honorable Minister in the morning mentioned 52 or 53 crore as one of the numbers that we need to keep in mind. There's a huge amount of, just like we are making midday meals and textbooks free across the board, I think a minimum viable device, like he was mentioning, a 2000 rupee device, should be made available, but with moderated usage through everyone, so that if at all technology has to be. So access and the digital divide continues to be the biggest thing that we need to solve before we even have the other conversations. And the other is, I think, the capacities of the, again I'm speaking from the government's standpoint, capacity of the middle management, capacities of the teachers, capacities of the people in the system to be able to engage and integrate technology seamlessly and smoothly into their day-to-day way of functioning, until we are able to, because the way immediately I can think of खाना चाहिए तो Swiggy जाते हैं या XYZ places में जाते हैं. Average person should be able to think, अगर मुझे इस तरीके का content चाहिए तो let me look up XYZ type of a product. But that level of integration has not happened with the majority of people in the system, which I'm not saying is the ideal place for us to be, but for adopting technology and enabling learning, I think that could be. So I would say access and adoption and strategy and capacity building would be two from my side. Would love to hear some of the others.
Purvi?
I just want to bring in the aspect of mother tongue languages, because I think that is key when we are talking about, and all, whether it's technology, it's access, and however we are solving for the problem, it needs to keep in mind the language aspect, because that is key to the child that we are talking about. The rest of it stays.
Even though I'm a technologist, I will add a warning from a technology side as well. In the sense, as you said, we just started taking baby steps, right? And this is something, the problem that we think day in and day out, and we still don't know the long-term impacts of it fully, right? And as a technologist, it is the onus on us definitely to always keep that in mind and think about and measure, right? Both what is the actual positive outcome and are there any negative outcomes happening, and how do we mitigate that, right? There's a lot for us to learn there, but we will not learn unless we make the steps as well.
As the board is reminding us here, time's up.